Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fresh Take from What Fresh Hell, laughing in the face of motherhood. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. Today we're talking to Dr. Joanne Finkelstein. She is a clinical psychologist educated at Harvard and Northwestern University, an expert blogger for Psychology Today. Dr. Finkelstein's work has been highlighted in the New York Times, the Harvard Business Review, the Atlantic, and many other publications. Today, we're going to be talking about Dr. Finkelstein's new book, Sexism and Sensibility, Raising Empowered, Resilient Girls in the Modern World. Welcome, Dr. Finkelstein.
It's so great to be here.
So you start this book with a story that in the particulars was yours, but in the general, I thought, I've had this moment too. And I think many listeners of this podcast will recognize it themselves, that you as a girl encountered something that seemed like unfair to you. Like, hey, why are things that way? They shouldn't be that way. And you ask your mom about it, and almost immediately you get this sense that this is something that you're apparently not supposed to feel or at least talk about. So you tell us about that moment and what you learned from that moment?
Yeah, I was around 8 years old and I was baking brownies, I think, with my mother in the kitchen. And I noticed a piece of mail that said, Mrs., my father's first and my father's last name. And I thought, well, that's weird. I knew enough to know that Mrs. was for a female, but why would everything about her identity be erased? And so I asked her about it, and she sort of, in my memory anyway, she kind of stiffened and just sort of said, well, that's the way it's done. And, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a certain amount of pride in that, because getting married and being a Mrs. was a big deal. It was your main identity, especially back then.
I had a 6th grade nun who taught me grammar, and she taught me everything I knew. Sister Raymond, a male name, by the way. But I remember, raising my hand in class and saying, but why can't it be everyone is entitled to his or her own opinion? Why is it just his? And it was the same kind of thing, because that's the rule. That's what it is. You don't say his or her. You just say his, and everybody understands you mean his or her. And there's the end of story, right? With this sort of
such an erasure.
Yeah. And I remember also being sort of left like, does nobody else think that's weird? Like, okay, I guess it's only me that thinks it's weird. And that's how girls are left, is your argument that really drives this whole book, that when we don't explain things to girls, they're left being even more baffled than they were before.
Yes, there's a sort of crazy-making piece of it where you have to erase yourself, but everybody's saying, well, that's not erasing yourself, that's just how it is.
But at the same time, I think all of these women that were in our own lives, and us for our own daughters, when our daughters come to us, maybe we all have this idea that we're not supposed to say, like, you're right, that's unfair. Because is that a battle worth fighting? And what are we supposed to do about it? Is that what sort of colors these conversations? Like, what's the point? My mother or your mother or Sister Amy in my 6th grade English class, should they have taken a different tact? What might they have done differently?
Yes, they should have. I mean, I don't like to hold previous generations. So, everybody's a product of their generation. And I don't think that they had permission to think in those ways. And they also had to make choices of how to bring you up and make choices in the name of expediency. Like maybe she had a class to run and she didn't want to get into sexism with you. But These days, we want better for girls, and there's more permission in the culture to question things. And so we want to be able to prepare girls without scaring them, right? And so a lot of parents will skirt these issues or rely on girl power because they're afraid of instilling fear in their kids or making them feel inferior. And so the whole book is sort of all the ways that we can honestly talk with girls without scaring them.
Let's talk a moment about this idea of scaring them. What is frightening to people about these ideas? Is it the complexity of having the conversations? Is it the realities behind what's going on? Where does that fear come in? Because I don't think we think a lot about fear as a driver around our reluctance around these conversations.
That is such a good question. I think part of the fear is if you say girls are not always treated fairly, or girls have to be careful because they can be hurt when they're out on the street, or they can be yelled at for things that are beyond their control. And so I think there's that piece of it. And I also think that there's this fear of just questioning our own gender biases, right? We've put up with so much for so long that it would require us to sort of tap into all the ways that we've internalized gender bias and sexism. And so it's sort of this icky topic, and we kind of skirt over it and stay on the surface of girls are strong, girls are powerful, and you should always know that. But that doesn't prepare them for the unfair or unsavory behavior that they're going to encounter out in the real world.
Yeah, and I do think that sometimes the answers, the intellectual answers and the day-to-day answers to me seem a little bit mismatched, right? I went to a women's college. I was raised by a very feminist mother with some very feminist traditions. And now I'm raising a 12-year-old who I have a default to say, like, it is not your responsibility how people react to you, and hopefully giving strong feminist messaging to my own daughter, but at the same time trying to navigate a world of safety in which when I see her dressed in a bikini top going to a mall, I feel like, wait a minute, that doesn't feel like a safe choice. And I don't believe that other people's reaction to her is her responsibility, but I also feel this very practical concern that that outfit is going to bring some attention to her that she's not ready for. And so I do find these very complicated. I get lost in it.
And so it's easier just to not talk about it, right? And send them out the door because you don't want to blame her. You're not sure what to say.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
Speaking hypothetically. And so you don't say anything, and they get on the subway wearing something you're not sure they should be wearing on the subway for their own peace of mind, if nothing else.
Or you do say something and it gets, and it feels like you're kind of aligning with the dominant culture and slut shaming her.
That's it.
And it causes problems in your relationships when it's not her fault. So it is really complicated. And those are the kind of arguments that I want parents to lay out for kids, right? I want them to say just what you just said, which is, it isn't your responsibility. And yet we live in a culture where this happens. And so we're trying to balance you having the autonomy that you deserve to make the choices you deserve with your safety. And so when you're on the train, I'd love you to just throw a sweatshirt on.
I'm going to quote something from the book, Dr. Finkelstein. You said, I see female patients, this is in your practice, I see female patients who feel responsible for things outside their control. Girls whose anxiety, depression, or daily struggles are caused or exacerbated not by what they do, but by the way they're treated because they're girls. And I thought, yes, that's exactly what we're talking about here. The world is harder on girls. Girls do have depression and anxiety, perhaps at higher rates than boys, because of things that are outside their control. But all of us sort of pretending that that's not true anymore does not seem to be doing the trick to make those things go away, which maybe is what we've been trying.
Right.
And so what is the path forward, though? Because, I mean, somebody would listen to this and say, well, I don't want my girls to think they're victims. Why bring this stuff up? I'm playing devil's advocate here. We're moving so far beyond this. We don't have to talk about this stuff anymore. Why are we still talking about this stuff? Girls can do anything. What happens when we offer our girls that very well-meaning response?
Yeah, and I think that actually speaks to Margaret's question about why we don't, because we don't want our girls to feel like victims. We don't want them to feel inferior. And so we're always balancing the darkness with hope, right? As parents, when we have to sort of bring in this kind of icky news. It's not fair, but we are fighting for a better world and we are getting closer. And even when there's backlash, there's some hope to be drawn from that, as disheartening as it can be, because where there's progress, there's always going to be backlash. So if there's backlash, we know that we're actually making progress. We're not going back home into the kitchen and giving up our rights. We're fighting for them.
And I think we've had the conversation a lot on the podcast, and I want to talk a little bit about what happens when we don't have these conversations and that gap that gets left and how young women especially fill that in for themselves. And we will be right back after this break.
Hellions, it's time for some spring cleaning, and I don't just mean the coat closets. Doing your financial spring cleaning can actually be super easy when you let Monarch do your financial spring cleaning for you. One dashboard that gets your entire financial life organized. No more clutter, no more mess, no more logins scattered everywhere, just accounts, investments, property, and more, all in one place. Get your first year of Monarch for half off, just $50 with promo code FRESH. Monarch allows you to look not only at what you've already spent, but also to plan for the future. With Monarch, you can set savings goals, plan for big purchases, and notice spending trends before they become a problem. I can generate cash flow reports that show me what we spent this quarter, this month, what we're probably going to spend next month, and feel prepared, organized, and knowing how to plan for the future. No more surprises and a lot more clarity. Try Monarch. Use code FRESH at monarch.com to get your first year half off at just $50. That's 50% off your first year at monarch.com with code FRESH.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or dsw.com today and let us surprise you.
Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, and it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women, tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING.
So Amy often says on the podcast, the pain is in the gap. And like, it's the places where we don't want to go, or the distance between we want the world to be one way and we have to have these difficult conversations. And so I think the idea, and what I pulled from the book, and we've talked about this with talking about racism with our kids or other difficult conversations with our kids, that if we don't have these conversations, sometimes we think our kids will just stop thinking about it. But instead, if we don't have these conversations with our kids, something worse than that happens. And so what is it that happens when we try to just skip these conversations with our girls?
I think they start to internalize the gender biases and sexism that they face, right? And so even girls today who are so much more aware of sexism in the culture and the cultural ambivalence toward women, they're at risk of internalizing it just as much as anybody else, because it's kind of an identity politics, like my body, my choice. But it's one thing to be able to say that intellectually, and it's another thing to experience a pressured moment during a sexual encounter or catcalling on the street.
Well, I think the idea is so we get away from these conversations, but these conversations are powerful. Being able to talk these scenarios out and the realities out with our daughters is where they find that power in those situations. Is that right?
Yes. And if it's a topic that you've brought up in the house and they'll bring it up to you, they'll have somebody to talk to, or they'll be able to support their friend. And the thing is, we're playing the long game. It's going to hurt when they get some negative comment or some slut shaming at school. It's going to hurt, right? But we're hoping over the long game that they become very critical consumers of their culture so that they can start to recognize when they've been treated unfairly, when they're being interrupted. So we're just sort of helping them recognize the very male-centric culture that they're brought up in.
Let's talk about entitlement, because usually we think entitled is the last thing we want our kids to be, at least as we generally think of the term. But you say that girls need a healthy sense of entitlement and too often don't have it. So explain what you mean by entitlement and how parents can help our daughters get it.
Well, to put it into concrete terms, by third grade, girls start to ask for less than boys. So one study found that when kids are given the opportunity to negotiate for their favorite stickers, the older girls ask for 2 fewer than the boys. But here's the kicker, only when negotiating with a male. And that reflects the same gender gap in negotiation that we see in adults. So what lessons are we imparting to girls, either unconsciously or directly, that lead them to believe that they deserve less, especially with regard to speaking up, respect, and money? For one, if they speak up, they're often interrupted. For two, we teach them being liked is more important than being respected. And we just don't talk to them about money or give them as much money as we do boys.
And I think that some of these conversations, and it's certainly conversations that I'm having more as an adult than I had as a child, for sure, about roles and gender roles and how these things play out. And I remember in my 20s, like, oh, the boy on the diaper box is holding a briefcase and the girl on the diaper box is holding a broom. And these were certainly not conversations that I had as a young person. Then I see for my daughter a lot of girl power messaging, right? Like superheroes and fierce and feisty and young women and female heroes. And where does that fall? Is that the right kind of solution, or does it play out in kind of an empty way? I'm asking genuinely, like, I don't know. Is it helpful to give those girl power messages?
I think it can be helpful for giving girls like a can-do attitude and self-respect for the female gender. But it's also a mixed message, right? Because at the same time, in not so many words, we're teaching them it's their job to make everyone happy, to be liked, to swallow their anger, and so on. So there's this sort of very narrow range of acceptable girl voices that kind of straitjackets girls and also undermines how they're regarded. So in the book, I outline 4 important voices that we want to, above and beyond girl power or in addition to girl power, we want to make sure that they have a voice of integrity, which basically is understanding it's as important, if not more important, to be respected than it is to be liked. A voice of resistance, allowing them to resist, to be angry, a voice of ambition, a voice of authority, and then what I was saying with money, a voice of economic self-sufficiency. Those are things we really can cultivate as parents if we're thinking about it.
I think those parameters are so clear because I think some of us are very strong in certain areas, and that having these different parameters, I feel like I was raised very much like money and having your own money, and this is important, and having your own, it was a lesson that I was taught. But the idea that it was okay not to be polite and to say no and to put your own needs first. I still talk to my sisters about this as a middle-aged person. Like, we were very much, I think, raised to be pleasing to other people and polite. Like, that was a very important value in our family. That was important for good reasons in certain situations. But I'm still unlearning a little bit of, like, I don't have to be polite to people who make me uncomfortable. And I find that watching my daughter, that as a very empathetic and naturally empathetic person, but I don't know where to put the voice in that says, you don't have to hurt yourself to help other people. Like, I love the instinct to help others and to be kind, but I want you to put your needs in first. Is that just something that has to happen over 1,000 conversations? Sometimes I feel lost on that one.
I think all of it has to happen over 1,000 conversations, But right, we don't want to quell the instinct to be helpful and kind, and like those are good things, right? The problem is we teach girls to weight other people's comfort and perceptions over their own. So there's a story in the book where I went through this exact thing with my daughter. So my daughter, who had been up all night with growing pains, was lying on the front porch, just supine, clearly exhausted and sweating. She'd just maybe gotten home from school or had been on a long walk. I can't remember which. And her friend was over. And her friend said, "Oh, you want to walk me home?" And my daughter was lying there with her eyes closed. And she's like, "Sure. Let me just go in and get my shoes." She had thrown her shoes off. And she comes inside and I'm sort of like, "You know, you don't have to walk her home, right?" And like, if you're too tired, it's okay. And you're allowed to say that. And it's like doing it in the moment doesn't always work so well. And she just sort of looked at me and was like, "I'm going to walk her home. She wants me to walk her home." And so she did that. And like, fortunately, walking someone home 3 blocks away is not the end of the world. But, you know, and so she came home and we were able to really take it apart. And it started off with her explaining like, well, I don't want her to be mad at me. And so we had a whole long conversation about what her fears were and what would happen if she did say no, and what would happen if she didn't say no. And now she was expected to always say yes. And so, yeah, there are these ways that you're just sort of making these small dents to say it's okay sometimes to weigh your own needs as much as your friends' needs.
Or at least they're part of the conversation, right? That it doesn't have to be like, greed is good and you come first and forget everybody else. It's all about you. Or be a doormat, because that's what being a good daughter is all about. It has to be your needs can enter the chat at some point in the conversation or at every point in the conversation. That's a tough balance.
And I've watched my daughter become increasingly able to say no, or to come to me with a dilemma when she is not sure. Like, I don't really want to go to this party because I just don't enjoy really loud noise and crowds, but I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. And so, you know, at least she's coming to me and talking it through and like considering her own needs.
We're talking to Dr. Joanne Finkelstein. Her new book is Sexism and Sensibility, Raising Empowered, Resilient Girls in the Modern World. And we'll be right back. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that: taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence, all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code FREE.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code FREE. My favorite skincare products actually feel more like self-care, like they're so nice to put on and they smell so good that I'm actually happy when I get to that part of my day. And I swear that is how I feel about Osea's anti-aging body balm.
Amy, you are usually the lotions and potions queen on this podcast, but I have to say, hard agree.
Osea's anti-aging body balm is a liquid silk body balm that combines the lasting hydration of a lotion with the firming power of a serum, leaving skin smoother and firmer.
This body balm is clinically tested and designed to deliver visible results you can see and feel.
So we've gotten to use this product for a couple of months now, and I swear I have really noticed firmer and smoother skin, like on the back of my hands. It's like getting a mini spa treatment from head to toe.
Get a spring-worthy glow with clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now, we have a special discount just for our listeners.
Get 10% off your first order site-wide with code FRESH at OseaMalibu.com.
That's 10% off your first order with code FRESH at OSEAMalibu.com.
So, Joanne, here's the part of the book that's a little bit difficult because you say interrupting sexism for our daughters means being willing to explore it in our own beliefs and parenting choices. And what do you mean? My parenting choices, they're perfect.
Oh, we hate this part of the podcast when it starts with ourselves. Yes.
I'm a feminist parent. My choices are perfect. And yet I'm sure if I really explore it, there are probably some things that I could have done differently or said differently. So how do you start to do this work without beating yourself up too much?
I mean, it's one of the reasons why I included so much kind of cultural criticism into the book, because until we hear it said, until we know the research shows in your home, statistically speaking, in a heterosexual marriage anyway, or relationship, dad is probably speaking over mom and brother is interrupting daughter, then we know, oh, wait, I can pay attention to that. I can be aware if my son is dominating the conversation and intervene. I can help my daughter learn to say, I'm speaking, to bring Kamala Harris into this conversation, and to learn different ways of interrupting. And I can also explain to her what happens sometimes when girls are assertive and instead are considered aggressive. So there's all of these ways. I might notice when I'm more likely to call up and say to my son, come take the groceries in, when my daughter is perfectly capable of taking groceries in. So there's just a million small ways that in and of themselves don't matter, but they're cumulative, right? And they become these festering wounds of self-doubt.
We have people who listen from across the political spectrum, people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And I think sometimes these terms have become politicized to feel like feminism and girl power is kind of the purview of the left, maybe. Let's talk about that for a moment and like how this affects all people. It's not particularly a politically tied. I don't want people to hear feminism and feel like, oh, this doesn't apply to me. This is like lefties talking about their lefty stuff.
That's what I worry about too, because I think it's woman stuff. I think anything that gives women equal rights, and that includes all choices. I think a major thing that has to end in order for sexism to end is women have to unite. So we have to end the mommy wars. We have to end the stay-at-home versus working mom wars. We have to end the breastfeeding versus bottle feeding wars. Like, bye-bye to all of that stuff.
Yeah, because these ideas really aren't about political ideologies. Like these archetypes that you talk about, they're useful. It's good for any young woman to understand, and for us as parents to be having a conversation about assertiveness, about economic health and ideas. And these conversations are not just limited to the kind of political version of feminism that I think sometimes stops people from wanting to participate in these conversations. Does that seem right to you?
Oh, yes. It's such a beautiful point. I mean, in some ways, this gender bias and sexism that we're talking about, it's a slippery slope to sexual harassment and assault. So nobody wants their child to be hurt. And so instilling a sense of boundaries and consent is important for all families, for everybody's daughter, regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum. Unwanted touch starts in childhood, right? With a squeeze of the cheeks or the waist or being pulled into laps and uninvited hugs. That happens to all girls. And so they practice ignoring unwelcome touch and they kind of dissociate from their bodies. And then they become confused about who their bodies belong to and what's okay and when it's okay to speak up.
Do you think these things have gotten harder for today's girls? I think our culture is more sexualized. Maybe I'm just getting old, but it seems to me that girlhood and teenagerhood is more sexualized. Do you think these things are getting harder and our girls are more aware and feel more capable of self-advocating? Or is it they're harder and our girls are no more able to self-advocate? I hope that's not true, but I'm curious what you think.
I think that they are more able to self-advocate, but it's all of the subtle ways that sexism is infiltrating them that sets them up to not be able to, even if they aren't. I go back and forth on this because, again, I think so much of it is an identity politics where they get it intellectually, but when it's actually happening, it's much harder to intervene and to speak up because you are going to get pushback with, all this feminist stuff or all this equality stuff, or you're being too sensitive, you're overreacting. So when girls feel demeaned and they speak up, they're still just as likely as they were in the past to be called oversensitive or dramatic.
And I think another issue, and we touched on it a little bit, but I find myself thinking this all the time right now with my daughter, is this idea of I want to hand this empowerment to my daughter, but our girls are still encountering disempowering experiences all the time. And sometimes I think by only emphasizing this like ideal of empowerment, I'm not talking enough about the actual things that she's facing that are difficult. It's back to that kind of like sexy outfit versus catcalling. That's not your responsibility. And similarly, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg pin, hooray. But I don't know that she's ready to deal with someone asking her to have a beer at a party and she's not ready for it. Like drilling down on these lessons as opposed to just kind of these big slogans that maybe some of us get caught up in.
Well, I think it's so important to do some of the outright teaching. You might go to a party and there'll be someone there who wants you to drink. And here are 3 things that you can say to stop that. And know that you can call me anytime you want, no explanation needed. You will not be in trouble and I will come pick you up. So there's that stuff. But even more powerful are the teachable moments. Whether it's teachable moments, somebody is pressuring somebody on a show you're watching together to drink a beer or to get in a car with somebody who's been drinking. Those are all moments that you can bring that up and say, what did you think of that? And have you ever experienced something like that? Or did you notice that the waiter at the restaurant didn't talk to me or make eye contact with me until he realized I was the one paying the bill and was going to be tipping him? So there's all these ways that you're bringing it into their consciousness.
Yeah, those simple, tangible things and those day-to-day lessons. I think that sometimes we talk on the podcast as if there's a magic word or there's a magic conversation or a magic answer to this singular question. And unfortunately, it's 1,000 conversations, and it is also how you conduct yourself. I grew up with a very strong personality mother, and I'm a strong personality person myself. But I think for people who don't feel that way, you can also sometimes model for your kids. Like, it's really hard for me when I see like an authoritarian person, a male. It's sometimes hard for me to find my voice in that situation. And this is what I do to get around it. That you don't have to have all these skills to impart skills to your kids.
Yes, you don't. You can say, I'm still working on it.
Yeah, because it's hard.
You don't have to have all the answers. I mean, it could just be a conversation that you bring up, right? So you say, God, this dress is so tight. And isn't it weird that we're just sort of conditioned to believe that there's pain and beauty and that we have to kind of accept pain and wear really tight stuff? Or, so there's these ways that if you're not making your daughter the focus, you're probably going to get through to her more.
That's such a good point. It's not like, here's what you're doing wrong. It's like, oh, here's an observation that is not putting a white hot spotlight on you at this moment, especially when you got tweens and teens, people. That doesn't go well.
Right. Mom's doing something wrong is probably a more palatable way to enter the conversation.
Yeah.
We've been talking to Dr. Joanne Finkelstein. Her new book is Sexism and Sensibility, Raising Empowered, Resilient Girls in the Modern World. We will put the link to buy the book in the show notes for this episode. Dr. Finkelstein, tell our listeners where else they can find you on the internet.
Sure. You can find me at joannefinkelstein.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter on there or at joannefinkelstein.substack.com. And on Instagram, I am at joannefinkelstein.phd.
You do not have to remember those things, friends. If you're driving, don't drive off the road trying to write it down. All of these links will be in our show notes. And Dr. Finkelstein, thank you so much for talking to us today. This is a great conversation.
It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.